Anyone who's in tune with the pedal world when it comes to guitars will know the name Strymon. They produce some of the best kind of high quality guitar effects that you can get on the market today. And for anyone who is clued in with them as well, will know that they've been releasing these like smaller format pedals that I think for anyone who was a bit intimidated by the quite big and quite complicated Strymon pedals, I think we'll get on really well with these. Well, Strymon have already released a reverb and a digital delay in this line. They have released a brand new tape delay to join those ranks called the EC1. Now, this is based on one of the most famous tape delays in history. That's the Echoplex EP3. Now, there's a few things that go into this pedal that I particularly love about it. We're going to split this video up into chapters, so if there's a certain section you do want to see, then check the timeline below, and while you're there, give us a subscribe, but let's just jump right in with it. So as I've mentioned, simplicity is the key with these pedals, particularly with the EC1 here. Everything is right on the surface. Now, there is a couple of little things in the pedal that you kind of need to like do a couple of like button combinations to get access to, but they're not the most essential, and there's only going to really be like one that I'm going to particularly cover. So looking at the front of the pedal here, time's going to control the length of the delays. So in the middle, you're getting that pretty like kind of steady repeat there. You go much lower, you're getting obviously like more of a slapback sort of effect. And then of course, if we ramp that all the way to the top, we're going to get some pretty long. You get some pretty long repeats coming back at you there, which even picking up a little bit of the squeaking from the tremolo bar there as well. But this is probably a good opportunity actually to show the kind of like meat and potatoes of the EC1 here, because it is going for that like Echoplex tape delay thing. There are a lot of options in here to like degrade the sound of the delay and to kind of make it act like more of those like vintage, you know, big mechanical proper tape delays. So the two that you're really going to be focusing on are the tape age and the mechanics. And I just focus on the tape age here first and turn the mechanics down. So this does pretty much as you would expect, seeing it on the tin there. Putting it all the way down to the bottom is going to be pretty pristine repeats. It's not going to sound like a digital delay, but it's certainly going to act like it, where it's, you know, your delays aren't going to like degrade too much. And then of course, the more we put that up, the more the repeats are going to sound like that more kind of like old worn tape sort of sound. Now to add to that kind of like older sort of big Echoplex sort of sound as well, there is this mechanics knob over here as well. Now basically what this is going to do, as you increase it, it's going to give you more of that like uncertainty that you get with the repeats with those sort of older machines, because with them they did have a tendency to not freak out in any sort of way, but more so like the repeats wouldn't be perfect because they were mechanical tapes actually going around. They were just a bit more prone to like inconsistencies, shall we maybe call them. But it is a very cool sort of device just to like, just make it a little bit more interesting. So I'll turn down all of the age here and I'll actually just let you hear what the mechanics is doing. So we've heard it just without, but just to refresh your ear. And then we start bringing that in and you'll notice just on the repeats, so almost giving it a bit more of sort of like a modulation sort of sound there, which you did hear it kind of chorusing just towards the end, but there's also this like almost kind of lo-fi vibe to it as well. I mean, if you play any sort of like lo-fi guitar or anything, then this is absolutely perfect for that. Just you can hear those kind of like, as I said, those little imperfections, those little kind of ear candy bits that I think a lot of people really gravitate towards when they're playing with a Tape Echo. So of course, when you mix the tape age and the mechanics together, you really start to get that proper old school sort of tape delay sound. Now this would be like if you pulled this out of like, you know, a family member's cupboard or something and it was covered in dust and you plugged it in immediately. This would probably be kind of the sort of sound you would get if it even worked at all. As Aaron so quite rightly said as I was playing there as well, imagine that in a big venue kind of coming through a PA, especially, you know, if you're in like This Will Destroy You type, like post-rock, sorry, completely different genre. But the cool thing about that as well is just, you know, that felt quite musical in itself. You know, even with that, it's just that little bit of inspiration towards it that changes just a couple of chords into almost this like pad sort of like vibe. What I really like about that is just it's inspiring. It just makes you want to kind of play it a little bit more. So you've seen me mess about with some of the other knobs there as well. Of course, the mix is just going to be the level of your delay and the repeats are how many times it is actually going to repeat as well. If you go that all the way to the top, of course, that's going to absolutely freak out. And I'm not going to do that because that will sound a bit wild being recorded at the moment. But there are a couple of other features that I do want to talk about, particularly let's focus on this record level switch that's right in the middle here. So this has been on medium the entire time. Now to break it down really, really easily, when it's on low, well actually, before I even tell you what each of the settings are, let me just tell you what it does. It basically is just going to give you like a kind of preamp boost to your input. Now that was one of the things that people particularly loved about the old Echoplex, and actually some famous guitarists as well wouldn't even use the delay functions, they would only use the preamp. So when you're at the low setting here as well, there's no boost to your input at all. This is just your guitar going in as it is. Now the medium setting that I had on there was actually a +6 dB boost to it. Now if we can hear just a little bit of that difference. Now it's quite subtle on that setting, but it's definitely giving you that slight more kind of warmth and like a little bit of drive just to those repeats there. Now, when you go into the high, this is actually a plus 12 dB, and you're going to hear those kind of like more driven repeats a lot more.
Delay is unforgiving.
And of course you heard all of those wrong notes being repeated through there as well. But that's quite a cool little vibe. Now I have tested it, and maybe someone can tell me in the comments how you are actually able to do it, but I wasn't able to get just the preamp just working by itself, again, kind of given that sort of vibe that a lot of other musicians have used within Echoplex, where you're just getting the preamp push. If you do, you know how to do that, let me know down in the comments. Now, of course, like a lot of other Strymon stuff, there are a ton of options in this, including a USB out for updates. There's also MIDI functionality, and of course the ability to go stereo out with this. There are a few other settings just kind of beneath the surface that are really, really easy to get going in terms of actually what you may need it for. So for example, you can boost the preamp, you can do a couple of MIDI clock sort of things as well. But the one that I particularly want to focus on is if you press and hold the bypass switch here. Now that's not until it turns blue, because that's actually, or green in that sense, because that's actually your tap tempo functionality as well, which is really handy with this, and there is an ability to actually plug in a separate foot switch to do the tap tempo on it. If you press and hold it just for a second and then start to turn this repeat knob in the middle, all the way counterclockwise here on the red, this is basically, this is to control like what the kind of preamp is that you've got going on with it. So when it's over to the left here, totally bypassing it. Now, when we go into the amber here, this is like a modded preamp that they've put into it. Essentially, it's giving you kind of a more sort of like balanced sort of output, very much kind of like a tube sort of preamp. So actually, I'll let you hear the new one, and then we'll go back and you can hear the difference between the two of them. So it's just kind of like accenting everything just that a little bit more. Now there is another option as well on it, which is essentially like the original tube that's kind of like, it's based on the one that comes in, the EP3. And this is more to kind of like accent highs here. So I've been playing on like more of a kind of split coil sound on this. But what I'll do is, let's go back to the first one, and I'll go to my neck humbucker here, and you'll probably hear what that kind of accented highs are going to be doing. So that's really, really handy, especially if you do have a couple of guitars in your set. So you maybe got a Strat, a Les Paul, you can change that really, really easily on the fly, just so that like when you move over to your darker sounding guitar, it's not completely like muddying out as well. And actually like changing to that setting and then messing about with the tape age and the mechanics knob there as well. Very much it kind of sounded like there was like a bit crusher on it as well, despite it going for that more kind of old school sound, showing that, you know, tape delay just isn't for like classic rock and sort of 70s stuff. So hopefully that gave give an idea of what the brand new Strymon EC3 can do. I've really been loving the fact that they have been kind of taking some of those really iconic sounds that they've had, say, in their bigger pedals, and putting them down into these kind of more, like, I guess probably call them board-friendly sizes. Only just because, like, some of those bigger units, although they've got all the sounds in the world, sometimes you only need one, and, you know, one really good sound as well, which you're certainly getting with the EC1 here. But why don't you let me know what you think about it down in the comments below, and while you're there, give us a like and a subscribe, because you can keep up with all the latest news at Guitar HQ. But until next time, I've been Kieran, and this has been the Strymon EC1. Have a great day.